Welcome to Motive and Malice. This is where we dig into the sources behind some of the most chilling true crime stories out there. And today, today we're looking at the case of a doctor who didn't just break his oath. He twisted it into an instrument of pure horror. We're talking about Dr. Farid Fata.
All right, let's just jump straight into the heart of it. The screen shows a quote from the U.S. government's own sentencing memo, and it is absolutely bone-chilling. It says, he ordered his patients poisoned for money. Just let that sink in. This wasn't some mistake, not a case of medical malpractice. This was cold, calculated, and deliberate.
And this image you're seeing now, it just says it all, doesn't it? A doctor's stethoscope all tangled up in a pair of handcuffs. I mean, that's the ultimate symbol of betrayal, right? The very tool of healing becoming a symbol for a predator.
So, how does an empire like this crumble? Well, you'd think it would be some huge sweeping investigation, right? Nope. For Fata, it all started to unravel because of something completely random. A simple, really unfortunate accident that, by pure chance, put the right pair of eyes on the wrong set of medical charts.
It all started with a broken leg. Seriously, back in 2013, a patient named Monica Flagg goes in for her very first chemo session with Dr. Fata. Just hours later, and this is totally unrelated, she falls and breaks her leg. Talk about bad luck, right? But what seemed like a terrible accident, well, it turned out to be the twist of fate that would end up saving so many lives.
So, while Monica's in the hospital getting treated for her leg, another oncologist, a Dr. So Mung Lei, happens to look at her file. And what he sees just turns his stomach. He realizes the chemo she just got was completely 100% unnecessary. Why? Because Monica Flagg didn't even have cancer.
And just like that one horrifying discovery, it ripped the curtain back on a true monster in a lab coat. And this wasn't some back-alley doctor. We're talking about a man with a super prestigious background, from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, no less. A man who had built this massive empire, all of it on a foundation of pure deception. And the scale of this deception, it's just staggering. I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. The FBI investigation would eventually uncover over 553 victims. And get this, those victims, they received more than 9,000 medically unnecessary injections and infusions. 9,000! That's thousands of doses of literal poison being pumped into people's veins for nothing more than profit. It was all part of a massive scheme that bilked insurance companies out of more than $34 million. $34 million. For treatments that weren't just useless, they were actively, horrifically, painfully harmful. His methods were just systematically cruel. It's almost unbelievable. First, he'd diagnose perfectly healthy people with cancer. Then, for patients who were actually in remission, he'd tell them they needed years of so-called maintenance chemo. And maybe the most disgusting part? He pushed these incredibly aggressive, toxic treatments on terminally ill patients, people who should have been getting palliative care to make their last days comfortable.
So the big question is, why? Why would a respected doctor do something so monstrous? And the answer, as it so often is in these cases, it's really simple. Just staggering, all-consuming greed.
You want to know his motive? Check out this email investigators found. It says everything you need to know about his mindset. While his patients are suffering, literally being poisoned, Fatah's firing off an email to his financial advisor with "urgent" in all caps. And what's so urgent? A great deal on a castle in Lebanon for $3 million. His patients weren't people to him. They were just walking ATMs to fund this insane lifestyle.
And here's how he got away with it for so long. He built this totally self-contained ecosystem of fraud. Look at this list. He had 7 of his own clinics, his own in-house pharmacy, his own radiation institute, and even his own testing facility. By controlling everything from the diagnosis to the treatment to the drugs, it was almost impossible for a patient to get a second opinion. He controlled every single step of their so-called care. But you're probably still wondering, how could this possibly go on for so long? Well, what's really, truly shocking here is that people did try to stop him. The system that's supposed to protect us, it just completely failed to listen, for years. The very first red flag was waved way back in 2010. A nurse, Angela Swantek, reported Fata to the state because she saw he was using improper dosing. But after a whole year-long investigation, he was cleared. They found nothing. That means for 3 more years, he had a green light to just keep poisoning people. It wasn't until 2013 that the truth finally came out, thanks to Dr. Mongley and the practice manager, George Karadash.
And honestly, these three are the real heroes of this entire story. You have Angela Swantek, the nurse who spoke up first. You have Dr. Soe Mongley, who found that undeniable clinical proof. And then you have George Karadash, the manager who dug into the billing data and went straight to the feds. These were just regular people who risked their entire careers to do the right thing, especially when the system itself completely dropped the ball.
So it still begs the question, why did nobody else speak up? Well, one source put it pretty bluntly, saying Fata was, and I quote, too profitable to tattle on. Think about that. His high-volume business was making a lot of money for a lot of people, and that profit created this powerful, unspoken system of silence that protected him and his horrific crimes. Finally, in August of 2013, the FBI raided his offices and Fata was arrested. His reign of terror was over, and what followed was a trial that would expose the full, gut-wrenching, horrifying depth of his cruelty for the entire world to see. Now, at the trial, the prosecutors didn't mince words. They called him the most egregious fraudster in the history of this country, and they asked for a 175-year sentence, basically life in prison. But the judge ultimately gave him just 45 years. But during that sentencing hearing, the victims and their families finally got their chance to confront him face to face. Can you imagine? One woman, Laura Stedfeld, whose father was a victim, she looked right at him and said what you see on screen. I hate you. You are repulsive. You disgust me. You are a monster. You are evil. You murdered my dad. You poisoned, tortured, and murdered my dad.
And the stories just kept coming. Another victim's daughter shared this absolutely heartbreaking account. She said, "He did not even let my dad die in peace. My dad had to beg Farid Fata to remove his chemo pump while he was on his deathbed." I mean, the cruelty didn't stop, even in a person's final moment. And for the people who survived him, justice is a really complicated word. Many of them are left with permanent organ damage, just wrecked immune systems, and on top of all that, crippling medical debt. There was an $8 million civil settlement, but when you split that among so many victims, I mean, how can that possibly be enough to compensate for the living hell they were put through? And all of this really leaves us with one big, pretty unsettling thought. See, Fatawa wasn't stopped by the system. He wasn't caught by regulatory boards or the normal checks and balances we think are in place. He was stopped by a few brave individuals who saw something deeply wrong and risked everything to speak up. So it really makes you wonder, what does that say about the safeguards we all trust to protect us? And that's where I want to turn it over to you. What do you think? What kind of safeguards should be in place to make sure another Dr. Fata can never happen? What needs to change in the healthcare system to protect patients from predators hiding in plain sight? Let us know what you're thinking down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for joining us here on Motive and Malice.